Hey, welcome to Art with Ian. Today we're talking about creature design. That's coming up next. All right, welcome to this 6-part creature design series. This is episode 1, finding resources. This is the phase, probably one of the most important phases of creature design, at least in my workflow. This is where you get inspired, you look at what's real in the world, and you think about how certain forms or functions of different creatures could maybe be taken out of their personal context and fused or spliced in with other creatures to create new ideas that are still somewhat believable, or at least visually engaging. So, the first thing I'd like to do is talk about why we use references. So, why do I need references and how do I use them? So, references allow us to see what's real and not rely on our perception of what's real. Not only do they help us bring a sense of believability to our work, but they also help us build our visual library. What that means is that down the road, if you've done enough, let's say you've drawn enough tigers off a reference, eventually you'll have a really great understanding of the subtle nuances that makes a tiger look like a tiger and not like a bobcat with stripes, for example. Okay. Now, there's no wrong way to use references, in my opinion, but I do believe that there are methods that are more beneficial to your growth as an artist. So don't be a slave to the reference, first of all. So when you get a reference, don't spend all your time laboring over making your painting or drawing look exactly like the reference, because that photograph already exists. Bring something new to the world. Don't just try to duplicate what you're seeing unless you're doing a very specific one-to-one study, and the whole point is to learn how, if you're learning in that way. But if you're trying to create or design, look at the form and the function of the subject, and then try to apply that relationship of function and form into your own design. And what I mean by function and form is, let's say a crab has pincers, right? And the form, you see these round outside and sharp insides. You see the area where the pincer is actually sharp and could grab onto things and do damage. And then the function is to grab onto things and do damage. And so the form and the function relationship of a crab's pincer is really clear and obvious. And so when you're designing your own creatures, you want it to look cool. But before even that, you want it to look like it could work. It has some sense of function. Like, what's the point of this thing? So ask yourself these kinds of questions when you're going into your creature design. Do you want this thing to be a predator? Do you want it to be a herbivore, a carnivore? Do you want it to live in the water? Do you want it to be semi-aquatic, like an amphibian? Has it evolved past a point of having to protect itself more primitively? Does it still need armor? Is it slow? Is it fast? You ask yourself these kinds of questions, and then based on the answers you give yourself to those questions, it's time to start looking for references. So, where do I find reference? So you can find tons of great reference on the internet, but be careful how you use it. If you're only going to use it to get inspired and not for copying, you're fine to grab basically anything from anywhere on the internet, because what you end up with doesn't look anything like what you used as for inspiration. So no one can say that's copywritten material. However, if you do plan to copy, I suggest using your own photographs as much as you can, or just get online and pay for stock images. Like, there are certain things you just can't get a photo of, like a deep sea fish, or you don't have money to go to the African safari and take pictures of lions and elephants and you want to draw them. That's where, if you're going to do one-to-one copies of these images, you need to go pay a little bit of money and buy stock images and support the photographers who put those great images in the world. Because just like you want to be supported for your art, if you're putting art in the world, you want people to value that. These photographers also need to be valued. So just drop a few bucks in a stock image site and pick up whatever you want to, whatever you want to copy. And now if you're doing fan art, try not to like use other fan art from other artists as your inspiration. Actually get the original IP's concept art and use that for your inspiration, because the reason for that is because the fan art might look good and it might actually be really good, but you never know if the artist is maybe a junior artist, they're not a pro, where there might be subtle issues that you're picking up bad habits from them, like they didn't have their perspective quite right. Their proportions might be a little tiny bit wonky, and they're kind of burying that with great rendering skills or something like that. Either way, the pros, the guys who develop these IPs, are the people you should be looking to get inspired if you want to draw fan art from, because those guys they're the pros. So that's that. All right, so once you know where to find your references, you know what you're inspired to create, but you need to start actually building a reference sheet. So this is my overall reference sheet for the design that I'm going to be doing in later episodes of this series. As you can see, I've got a couple creepy kind of sea creature heads. And then I've got some crabs, some turtles, this fish with a bizarre mouth, just to potentially drive a decision making to not be too, hyper normal in the mouth area. Whether or not I'll actually use it, I don't know. And then I've got dinosaurs and gorillas. So what I want to accomplish here is a creature with a somewhat maybe prehistoric or primitive look to it that still has some body armor. So I'm actually, the crab and the turtle, what I want to pull from those mostly is a sense of armor. So I might use like the turtle shell as like an overall form, but then the aesthetic of the crab is super cool. These king crabs with their spikes and stuff, I might add that kind of a feel to the shell, to the armor. And then the dinosaur aspect is, I want this thing to be bipedal, but instead of being bipedal with these tiny little arms, or this I think is a raptor, and it's got bigger arms than a T-Rex, but it's still very bird-like, right? And then I want arms. I want this thing to have these big, intimidating arms, and so that's where the gorilla comes in. So basically we've got this sort of fusing the stances of a dinosaur and an ape with some kind of prehistoric head type of shape, and then armor from like a turtle and a crab fused together into some kind of armor. Whether or not I'll actually go with I might add like a pincer to one of his hands, or how far I get with what influences what parts of the design is going to come down to thumbnailing, and that's going to be in the next that'll be episode 2. So you can see here that I've got a little pie chart. Now this is not 100%. I don't like being overly mathematical or overly firm with my decisions. I just like to give myself a little push, in a direction. So I've got these pie charts here, and you can see the red is how much turtle crab makes its way into the overall design. The blue is how much gorilla makes its way in, and then the yellow is how much dinosaur. And so that would be one way. Or I could do yellow. Now the yellow is taking over the majority of the design, and we've got still the same amount of gorilla, and we've traded off with the turtle crab. So it's more dinosaur, less turtle crab influence. And then lastly, we could do one that's a ton gorilla, and then a little bit dinosaur, and then a quarter crab turtle. And like I said, these are super fluid. So like none of them are probably going to be the exact percentages that go into a final design. It's just a way to make sure your head is thinking, hey, it doesn't have to be exactly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 kind of a thing, right? Okay. So that's that. So then once you know what you want, then you start to focus in on each one of those things with more intensity and study what makes those things what they are. Get inspired. So I like to look at anatomy. I like to look at muscle. Why does this thing work? How do the legs work? Especially for the hind quarters, because that's really where I'm going to be pushing the dinosaur vibe, is in those hind quarter legs area. Also, I like this. This kind of already has a little bit. These kind of already have a little bit of my overall design idea with, like, it's kind of almost a turtle, or that turtle crab spiky shell kind of a thing happening on top of a dinosaur. The thing it doesn't have is the bipedal stance and the big kind of humanoid but gorilla arms. This skull is really cool. I think that my head I might kind of go in a direction like this for my head, but I'm not positive. But I brought it in. I also like this kind of head too. Kind of like, since I'm gonna have a turtle shell probably on the back, getting into a reptilian head will probably feel good. It'll probably be aesthetically pleasing, and the shape language of a reptilian head will go with the shape language of a turtle shell. So that's dinosaurs. Then I went in and got gorilla refs, and now having the anatomy comparison to a human is really, really good, because it helps you to see how they kind of they lean in on their arms, but if they were to push up, it's just they have slightly shorter legs and slightly longer arms, but if they were to push themselves up into a standing position, there's a very humanoid. Obviously, it's an ape, so it's really good to see these comparisons and how big things are compared to each other. And then see here how it leans in on its knuckles, how it like, if you're going to put pressure on your hand in the way that they do, and if I want my creature to look like it does that at times, then I need to understand, like, where's the weight, where's the gravity, how do they, because that's something you want in your designs, is like, where does the weight fall? Where does the creature allow gravity to push them down and then balance themselves? Because that adds to the fluidity of the design, the gesture, all that stuff. It matters. Like, look at this here. See how he's putting all his weight on this strong arm right here, and this one's kind of lifted up, and that you've got these really beautiful angles and lines happening throughout the body because of that, the gesture of how he's leaning in like that. And then this picture is just cool. I'm not sure how much of it will inspire my design, but it's just a really cool picture. Anyway, and then lastly, let's look at turtle and crab stuff. So these are king crab. I'm using king crab specifically because I really love the spiky stuff they've got going on all over them. They're super neat looking. Actually, I don't know if the one in the middle is a king crab, but anyways, the other two are. And then I've got these turtle sheets. These snapping turtles are super cool looking. Like, they're crazy. And I've got one here. You can see the underside of a turtle. It's pretty primitive looking. It looks like a plastic model or something, but it helps me to see how the extremities come out from the armor. And that's going to be really important because my design is bipedal, which means it's not like a normal turtle where you never see down below it. I need to understand what's going on in this region. Where do the arms come out? How does the shell give way to the softer flesh? That kind of stuff. This right here is another really good one. See all this, like, kind of segue from the soft flesh into the shell here? That's the way it's all like that grainy pattern, and it kind of follows the form. That's really helpful. This one too. Really helpful for kind of knowing how to work my own design and get a believability in the transition from clearly softer flesh to that harder shell-like material. So that's basically, those are my reference sheets. That's what I'm going to be using in episode 2 when I go through and start thumbnailing. and looking for a design that I want to take to final. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment if you have anything to say about it, or if you have any insight into getting where to get great references or how you like to work. And I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.